you. That's on page 9 of your declaration. Are there any other questions or comments? We have come through a long road together. You have a motion in front of you, and there is a swift pen on my left adding a further sentence to this to deal with the northeast corner, which we hope will affect a granting of that piece of property to the neighbor who is selling his land. Mr. Tinsman, you're poised for a question.
Well, more for in anticipation of that language coming up, and since the motion is fairly long, perhaps we can make the motion and then revise it after Mr. Butler gets through with that last piece of information.
Would you feel comfortable with that, Mr. Butler?
I would, as long as if somebody wants to then add on to G, to the first part of the motion, some language that would be appropriate, then I can continue on.
I've got something drafted, if I might, Madam Chairman.
Good. Mr. Tinsman, if you would be so kind.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Be it ordered that the request of Robert Taylor and Dana Goodwin to modify condition of approval G set by the Planning Board at its November 15, 1988 meeting for the Dyer Pond Road subdivision, a proposed 8-lot subdivision located off Shore Road, be granted such that said condition shall now be as follows. G, that the expiration date for the letter of credit shall be no later than October 14, 1990, and that any extension to same will require a resubmission of data with greater definition for the 100-year floodplain. Be it further ordered that condition of approval B is also modified for Dyer Pond Road subdivision such that said condition shall now be as follows. B, that the public pedestrian access shall extend from the designated pedestrian access, shall extend from pedestrian easement designated on the final plan to include the unpaved portion of the street right-of-way that extends to the western and southern boundaries of the Dyer Pond Road subdivision site, and that the applicant shall develop an easement deed or other form of conveyance to accomplish the intent of this condition, which shall be reviewed and approved by the town manager, town attorney, and town planner prior to the start of construction. Be it further ordered that a recordable plan for the parcel 1, which is located outside of the subdivision and described on page 10 of the draft easement deed F in paren F12700-021, close paren, shall be submitted to the town attorney and town planner for review and approval, and then recorded by the applicant before condition of approval F for the Dyer Pond Road subdivision shall be deemed to have met by the applicant. Additional language to deal with the other part of that is being drafted.
Thank you, Mr. Tinsman. Are we complete? Ready for the next reading?
Give it a shot.
The following reading.
We would add to that, then, be it further ordered that the request of the applicants to modify the approved final subdivision plan by transferring the strip of land to the north of the parcel currently owned by William Kennedy is hereby granted according to the facts presented.
Madam Chairman, I would move both readings.
It has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And opposed?
I'm abstaining.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then I would like to appoint Mr. Russ as a full voting member. Let's go back. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. And opposed? And the motion is carried 4-1. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Yeah.
And
we have available a revised Mylar original for signature tonight, which shows the change to the strip of land at the northwest, if the board can take the time to sign that now.
I think that would be appropriate since the town staff, Jerry Daigle, will be holding the plan, so that we can double check to make sure that only the two changes that were indicated have been made.
Madam Chairman, could I ask that we defer that until after the meeting so that we can sign it before we leave, since we'll be holding that ourselves anyway?
I think that would be appropriate. So if you would be kind enough, Mr. Taylor, to wait while we go through our other items.
Or just give it to us and we'll sign
Or
it.
give it to us, and then we can sign it at the end. You don't have to be present.
Trust-
Would that be agreeable? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Taylor.
ladies and gentlemen.
One of our swifter meetings, I think, with you. Our next item of business is In by the Sea, a site plan review for 6 cottage units and a restaurant under Section 19-2-9.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is David Jones. I am attorney for Great Cumberland Realty Trust, the owner of the Inn by the Sea. The application before you tonight is for site plan review with respect to a modification of the site plan that was approved by this board some time ago. The specific change is that the parcel of land adjacent to the inn previously owned by William Clark has been acquired by the Great Cumberland Realty Trust. It's been rezoned by the town as a Business B, and we are proposing to incorporate that parcel into the existing parcel occupied by the Inn by the Sea, to construct on that parcel a 6-unit motel cottage to tear down and remove from the site the existing single-family residence, to create additional parking and additional septic system capacity on the Clark property, to enable us to ask this board for a change of the restrictions set forth in its prior site plan review, which conditions I may be referring to zoning board restrictions, but restrictions presently in place on the parcel which prevent the use of the restaurant of the inn by members of the general public, and which restrict it to registered guests of the inn only. With regard to the specific criteria set forth in the site plan review ordinance, the ordinance requires that we demonstrate that provision has been made for safe and convenient pedestrian and vehicular traffic movement within and adjacent to the site. We have submitted a traffic study done by Dufresne Henry. We requested from them and received an updated letter indicating that their conclusions with respect to the impact on traffic safety have not changed since the time their original report was done. And they have factored in a 4% increase in traffic on Bowery Beach Road and have concluded that the traffic safety or the traffic service on Bowery Beach Road remains at level A. With regard to access, also with regard to pedestrian and vehicular movement within the site, Steve Moore from Land Use Consultants will introduce the site plan and describe the layout of the parking and the layout of the access roads and the location of the structures on the site. With regard to exit and entrance drives, we would not be changing the existing driveway leading into the site. Again, the Dufresne Henry report addresses that and concludes that there would not be any unsafe traffic condition created as a result of this proposal. With regard to the condition B, the exit driveway or driveway lane, I'd refer to the same Dufresne Henry report. The site does not occupy a corner lot, so that condition C is not applicable. The driveway is not being changed, is not located within 10 feet of a boundary line, and so condition D is not applicable. With regard to 2 or more driveways, again, condition E is not applicable. Condition F refers again to the driveway and the angle at which it intersects from the road, and that is not being changed. Condition G requires acceleration and deceleration lanes where the volume of traffic on the road would create unsafe traffic conditions, and the Dufresne-Henry report addresses itself to that issue and concludes that traffic safety on the road would continue at level A. The building and parking area design and layout, we believe, are compatible with the surrounding properties, aesthetically pleasing, and otherwise consistent with condition number 3, and Steve Moore will describe in more detail the proposed 6-unit motel cottage and the layout of the proposed parking. With regard to lighting, the parking area will be lighted consistent with the existing lighting at the site. That apparently has not created any problem. No issues were raised with regard to lighting in any of the prior public hearings, and that type of lighting will be maintained in the proposed parking area. With regard to buffering, again, Steve Moore and Ken Porter, if necessary, from Great Bay Company, will describe the buffering that is proposed along both Bowery Beach Road and along the adjacent property owned by the Rautenbergs. With regard to environmental considerations, the developer has engaged the services of Mahar Seavey Consultants. John Seavey has prepared a report with respect to the potential impact of the proposed additional septic system, as well as a report evaluating the performance of the existing septic system, or evaluating the impact of that. And he is here tonight to address the issues raised in that report. Without dragging out this presentation, I would like to introduce Steve Moore to describe the site plan.
Before Mr. Moore comes up to the podium, I would just like to share with you, and perhaps you have this information. The town received a letter today from the Department of Human Services. Do you have?
We did receive a copy of it. In
which the 6 cottage units are denied, and the 45-seat restaurant is granted.
We were very surprised by that letter. We don't consider it to be the final word of the Department of Human Services on the application. The letter that Mr. Breaux sent us indicates in a couple of areas a basic misunderstanding of what the application consists of. And the only supporting data that he cites in support of his conclusion is the report of C.V. Mahar Consultants, which says that there will be no adverse impact on the water quality of the marsh. So we find his decision very hard to understand. 2 things that I might point out in that letter. One, he indicates that the original minimum lot size waiver was granted for a 63-bedroom motel or hotel, and that it was subsequently changed to a 44-bedroom motel and 45-seat restaurant open to guests of the inn only. That's incorrect, and we think based upon his misunderstanding of the present approvals, he has drawn some erroneous conclusions. The application for the minimum lot size waiver was not changed from a 63-bedroom to a 44-bedroom motel. It has always been a 63-bedroom motel, and a 63-bedroom motel exists there on the site at the present time. The issue of the restaurant was raised with the question as to whether that would require an amendment to the minimum lot size waiver. And the decision that we received from Jay Hardcastle of the Division of Health Engineering at that time was that so long as the restaurant was open only to registered guests of the inn, it was not viewed as having an impact on the overall water usage at the site, and that therefore it was allowed under the then existing minimum lot size waiver, which was for 63 bedrooms. So Mr. Bro's misunderstanding of the application, I think, led him to conclude that the developer was required to reduce the number of bedrooms on the site in order to open the restaurant to guests of the inn, and that is simply not the case. He says that based upon water usage records that he's reviewed, he's reaching the recommendation that he makes, but he hasn't indicated in his letter what those water usage records are, and all of the water usage records that have been submitted to the Department of Human Services by the developer have indicated that the present system is using far below its engineered capacity. So by stating that we don't know, but by stating that he's basing his decision on water usage records and then reaching a conclusion that is contrary to what those records would indicate, we're very confused. If I may, what I'm getting at is I don't think that his letter is the final say. We do intend to go back to him, hopefully meet with him next week, meet with more senior people in that department if necessary, and we do intend to pursue the proposal that is before you tonight rather than accept the letter that we've received from Mr. Bro.
Mrs. Guthrie.
Madam Chairman, just one question. I seem to recall a letter which was given to us some time ago. I couldn't find it today for tonight's meeting in the jumble of it all. But it was a similar letter to the Inn by the Sea indicating that you were exceeding the amount of water that you were allowed. And I don't know, I think it must have been about 8 or 9 months ago that...
That's true. The water usage reports that letter was based on were the total water usage for the inn, which included the water used for irrigating the lawns and the gardens. There is separate meters for that, and when we went back to them and separated out and demonstrated to them what part of the water usage was going into the septic system and what part of the water usage was going onto the lawns, they were satisfied that we were well below the permitted capacity.
Well, when that happens, you would think that we would get a letter to that effect too.
We certainly would wish that they would follow up their condemning letters with ameliorating letters, but we did not get such a letter.
Thank you.
Mr. Tinsman, you
Madam
want to...
Chairman, we had proposed as a planning board certain rules that require submissions to be a 15-minute or less presentation, and then we also have a second part of that being a certain time cutoff in our meeting. We've had a very long public hearing this evening. We still have 3 applicants, some of which might involve a full 15 minutes of discussion and maybe even discussion after that, but all at least initial things into the planning board. To the extent possible, I would hope that we can accomplish our full agenda this evening. And by saying that and without cutting off discussion on a very important project, I'm wondering if it's possible to, rather than go through a lengthy presentation this evening on this matter, do it on site. Take our site walk, maybe set a site walk, go down there and start looking around the property, look at the buffer areas, look at the setbacks, look at where buildings are proposed, and maybe even have a better sense and feel, rather than looking at map view, what is being talked about.
I think that's a very good suggestion, Mr. Tinsman. I imagine perhaps you are aware of our rule that we do have a 15-minute presentation so that we can get through our agenda items. I also feel that perhaps in light of this letter which has come to us, that perhaps we don't want to get too much into depth on the implications of the 6 cottage unit until you square that away with the state, and I think we can minimize any discussion on that part.
It's my understanding that tonight's meeting is not a public hearing and that this application would be set for public hearing at a future date.
We do not have to have a public hearing, but we may very well wish to.
Okay, we would ask that this letter that we intend to take up with Mr. Bro as soon as possible not postpone the scheduling of a public hearing, because we do expect to be meeting with them immediately.
Madam Chairman, one of the issues in setting for public hearings is that we have a complete site plan package before us, so that we're not taking a process through a number of needless public hearings where pieces of information are coming. I think the primary criteria maybe now is to determine whether we do have a complete application, if we do, to set the public hearing, and maybe even if we don't, even to set a site walk.
Well spoken, and I would certainly concur with that.
Want me to talk for a while longer? until you get-
Well, I'm trying to regain my my voice. Mr. Butler.
Just, if you want, I can quickly run down through the list. There are a couple changes to it. The applicant doesn't have it. We don't send out these checklists to the applicants. I'm not sure we have extras, but pretty much it goes down to the requirements. Building plans and all elevations is marked down as partial since we don't have any plans or elevations regarding the 6-unit cottage structure. Number 2 was left blank. It should be okay, which is location map. 3A and 3B, which deal with the name and address of owner and the applicant. We don't have a copy of the application form. I assume one was submitted, but the folks in the office say one hasn't been. So those minor things, most of the items I have here are really minor, but I want to point that out. On 5A, where I put partial, it should be okay. Location of easements, something we need to ask the applicant, are there any easements on the site which haven't been identified? Going down, everything was okay or non-applicable until 8A. All existing physical features on the site and within 200 feet thereof, I put down partial. Some of the off-site features, especially with respect to some of the drainage aspects, are sketchy at best. Going on to page 2, high-intensity soil survey is either not applicable or not provided. That's something the board has to determine. Bumper information, I'm not sure that's even required. Sidewalk information, very minor point. They don't have any detailed information on the sidewalks. I'm not sure the board really wants to see any. Location, design of existing and proposed stormwater systems, I put down partial. There wasn't a lot of information there, but as Bob Hunter's letter indicated, the town engineer doesn't have much problem with the proposal from a stormwater perspective. Solid waste disposal, and storage, not really dealt with, but again, a minor issue. Lighting details, partial. They may have answered all the questions the board has tonight. You may want some additional information. And signs, I'm assuming there aren't any new signs being...
That's correct.
Okay. So that would now then be not applicable. So there are a few things that aren't there, but most of them are, and really getting down to the final minor points.
Madam Chairman, from staff view then, is there anything that holds up a complete application for the Inn by the Sea? Anything substantive?
I think you could probably find completeness tonight so long as I think you reserve the right to get more information about the marsh areas off-site which are being proposed to be used for detention. Also, I think you would want elevations and building plans if the 6-unit cottage structure actually does go forward after things have been worked out with the state.
So what you're saying is that though the information may be presented, we may not find it acceptable, particularly related to marsh or any other particular issue that we have.
Or that whether or not it's needed or not. I mean, it's not provided. I think on the elevations and the building plans, those should be looked by the board. If you feel that you don't need to go in a lot of detail in terms of the stormwater drainage, then they probably provide all the information needed. If you are concerned about where the stormwater is going and how it's going to be treated and the wetlands and marshes, you may want more information than what they've presented.
Madam Chairman, just as one board member, I feel that the elevations are very important for a public hearing. People are going to want to see what this looks like, and I would hate to take it to a public hearing without that data available.
I agree with you.
I think we can look down things and say some things are important, some things aren't, but I think in looking at the list the way Steve's gone over, we don't have a complete application.
I also think we have a very bad precedent if we make some value judgments on what's important and what's not important. I know we've told other applicants that if we don't have it, we can't do it, and I know we've told some applicants just what Steve is suggesting. I have trouble deciding whether or not stormwater information is significant when there's going to be an increase and a marsh is proposed without a detention pond, and I just, so I really don't know what is significant, what isn't significant, and I guess maybe I've been saying the same thing, but I think from here on out, I wouldn't even like to discuss whether it's almost okay. I don't really mean this application. I just think we got to have some sense of how we're going to handle it, and I think the list ought to be okay right down the line before we're put in the position of saying yes or no.
I think we have a general consensus of the board that, unless there's any disagreement that I haven't heard, that we would like to receive more information before we consider the application complete. Would it be your wish to set a site walk?
Madam Chairman, I would. I always feel a lot better in looking at a site by being in the field and walking it and looking at the plans, and would propose that we have a site walk on one of the Saturdays in early January.
Would it be possible, I'm directing this question to the applicant's team, would it be possible, okay, you've got it, okay, to have elevations available? All right, to have them, okay.
It's my understanding that these were submitted. I think we need to get together with staff to determine where the application form and perhaps the elevation plans are, and we can submit new ones if they're missing. But according to Steve Moore, who took care of collating it and submitting it, they were part of the package. But we certainly agree that we can't go to a public hearing without being able to present this.
And I think we do need more detail, particularly about the marsh and the stormwater runoff.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
There was also a request or a suggestion from Bob Hunter that test pit data be supplied to the town engineer.
And there are a lot of blanks on that test pit data. I wonder about filling those in, too.
Is that the data that was attached to the C.V. Mahar report?
Yes.
Okay, the letter from Bob Hunter to Jerry Daigle was December 12th, and your package of information was November.
Okay.
What would be your pleasure for a site walk? We have, well, first, you don't want to do it the 31st, probably, or would you? No, that you probably wouldn't do that. How about the 7th of January? And what time would be good for you, the applicant? Would you like to make a 9 o'clock? Is that too early? Let's say 9 o'clock on Saturday, the 7th of January, 1989. And we will, I also would just like to make note that the next submission date is the 30th of December, so for any materials, if you could have them in by then, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Have to, must, I'm reminding you, but in my ear.
In terms of clarification, would it be possible for us simply to go through this list again with Steve Butler to
Absolutely.
get his, because some of which is called partial, I think. It
May
may
be
be that there
fulfilled.
is no other information that is planned to be submitted on those issues because we're not proposing things like stormwater detention basins or whatever. But if we can work that out with him in the next week or so, we'll submit whatever we decide is missing by the 30th.
Fine. Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is a point of order, Madam Chairman?
Oh,
Point
yes,
of
there
order.
you are. Sorry.
Is it possible that the applicants in the future can see this list maybe before, something like
The
that?
checklist.
Yeah, we might be able to have some of these questions answered before our actual
I think
meeting.
that's an excellent
Get some
suggestion.
clarifications.
I think the list is probably drafted up maybe a couple of days before.
No, it goes out with the packet. So when Jane pulls together the final packets and sends out those materials to you with the final agenda, when she sends out the agenda, she could send out a checklist. Yeah.
To the applicants.
To the applicant. That hasn't been the practice up to this point, but if the board wants it to be.
It might have helped the situation here tonight.
The next item on our agenda is the Jordan's Agway Lawn and Garden Center coming in for a site plan review. And is there a representative here? I would just like to say that it looks unlikely that we will get to the hidden court proposal, but if you want to stay around, maybe we'll make it.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I will be moving later that we suspend our rules if it looks like we're going to be within 15 minutes or so that we can at least hear the initial submission and take the first procedural steps
Fine.
towards the completion.
All right. Hearing that, then best stay put. Would you introduce yourself and...
Good evening. My name is David Leisure from John Leisure Architect, Inc., and I'm representing Gil Jordan, the Jordan Farm Market, Jordan's Lawn and Garden Center, for a 1,600 square foot addition, which will, the use will be storage, approximately, 1,200 square feet of that is storage, 450 square feet will be repair-oriented for equipment. This addition is on the rear of the existing buildings, and I'd be happy to take the board through that plan. We have received the comments from T.Y. Lin Hunter Blue for the site plan, and I have revised plans here, and this represents the latest revision in all items represented to the board. I also have a new plan which I would like to hand out to the board this time, if that's possible.
You may hand it out, but I would just let you know that submissions do have to be in
I understand.
18 days before, so we will not be able to really consider those.
I understand that. I just wanted to bring everything up to date. Let me just take you through the plan, what Mr. Jordan intends to do. Existing parcels is a 2-acre parcel located on Route 77 in Cape Elizabeth. It has adequate sight lines in both distances of about 400 feet. The westerly sight line is in excess of that, some 800 feet. The two driveways that are circulation for vehicles at the entrance to the parcel will not be changed or remain as is, only for the fact that the vegetation, a high bush located near the sign at the entrance has been removed, and a new sign, which is now on the plans, will replace the existing sign of approximately the same dimensions, 4 foot by 6 feet.
Yes.
May I just ask, the new plan we get just now is labeled S1. Presumably it replaces the one that we had in our package?
That's correct.
What are the changes to that? Is it just the
The
sign?
changes are the sign. We now show, as per the T.Y. Lin recommendation, we now show these septic fields existing for this building, the septic field existing for the Stitches and Stencil building, and I believe that's it. That's all we've done.
Thank you, David. I just wanted to clarify that because we're sitting here going,
Okay. Sorry.
Madam Chairman, if I
Yes,
may,
Mr.
I
Bond.
think they also identify at least one of the abutters right on the plans.
We have added the butters too. I'm sorry, we have. And
One
an
question I
elevation.
had with regards to the sign, just right off, was that we received a communication from the police chief stating that he'd gone out and looked on the site, and that he was told that a new sign would not be placed, but that the existing sign would be used. Now I'm hearing that there's a new sign.
It's my information from the owner that a new sign would replace the existing sign there, the pole to remain. All that we're going to do is change the sign panel itself.
So it would
Is that
stay in the
correct?
same place, it'd
Yeah.
just be a different...
Excuse me, I'm Mr. Jordan. What it is, we are having a new sign made. The present sign size is 8 by 6, and the new sign will be 5 by 4. The actual sign size will be smaller. The pole that
So,
holds the sign...
excuse me,
is
but
no-
on the plans it says 4 by 6, so that's
four-
not right.
4 by 6, I'm sorry.
It is 4 by 6.
The new one would be 4 by 6.
Okay.
The pole that holds the sign, there's no changes in that.
Thank you.
I'll just be as brief as I can then. As far as the stormwater drainage, we feel that there will be little, if any, impact of the site, whereas we'll be installing a crushed stone gravel driveway to the rear, which will basically consolidate the open area that exists now. Stitches and stencil parking exists along the westerly side of the building, and we intend to consolidate all that parking into a logical sequence of safe vehicular traffic access to that area. I believe that's all I have to say. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to address those.
Yes, we do have a couple of questions. Mrs. Guthrie?
Madam Chairman, on this topo survey, I don't know what that is, but that the town engineer suggested that the topo survey should be available with 1 or 2 foot contours.
Intervals, yes.
Isn't that for fills?
As required, our information was 5 foot intervals. But in the meantime, we have gone out and done a survey ourselves to show that the land is very, very flat, approximately 2% pitch from the rear to the front. And I have also added those point elevations on there. It's basically flat. The water will, in fact, percolate down through the soil being sandy gravel. We see little, if any, impact or change in the stormwater.
Madam Chairman, just to clarify, usually 1 to 2 foot contours are required when a site is relatively flat, because you can't see where the water flows would be going because it appears flat. And so with 5 foot contours, you wouldn't know that. We'll have to double check with Bob Hunter, and I assume that the applicant would want to check with the town engineer as well, but I think he's probably going to want to see the 1 to 2 foot contours unless he hears something that alleviates his concerns.
All right.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, will this addition service area, how much more traffic do you expect that may generate? What are your...
I can't see that as far as the service, it will generate any more traffic problems than what we have right now. It will make it a little more accessible to the public to bring their service in than it is at the present time. At the present time, you have to drive down the driveway, around the back, and go in through the back door, and so forth. With the service entrance, as you come in the driveway, you'll go straight in to the service area. So it should actually be a little less hectic and so forth for people coming and going on service.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chairman, could we do the same process with this application in terms of a completeness review to see if there's data missing from the previously submitted plan?
Mr. Butler, would you walk us through the
With that qualification,
checklist?
sure. Again, same question in terms of building plans and elevations. Just the partial elevation, and that's it. They don't really say anything more than what's here. They show the basic outlines of the new storage building. Names, owners of all contiguous land, appears to have at least some of them now, they didn't before. Location of existing buildings and structures, again, they need to show that on-site but also adjacent to the site. Going down, location of easements, it's unclear whether there are any easements at all or not. That's something, no, I'm hearing no. Okay. Building setback, side line, and rear yard distances, not really there, not shown on the plan. They may be there now. All existing physical features on the site, really not much except for some vegetation. High-intensity soils, which always probably wouldn't be required here. That's up to the board. Topography, Bob Hunter's mentioned that. It says 5 foot intervals, and unless more detailed are required. Bumper information, I don't think it's necessary. Location, design, and sanitary waste. They weren't on the submitted plans. They seem to be now. Solid waste storage and disposal. I'm not sure if those are addressed. Landscaping and buffering. again, partially is unclear to know which of the vegetation was existing, which was new. Lighting details, again, not much more than locations. They didn't really say much about what they were, although they did give some standards. Signs was unclear. And in evidence of right, title, and interest, they have submitted, the applicant has submitted tax bills, and which isn't usually what's submitted, and so I put partial. It's there. I can change that to an okay unless somebody wants to see a copy of the deed or something else like that, which is normally what we see. That's it.
What is the board's feeling about this application being complete?
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
if I might, when you receive a plan that night, it's hard to then react at 9:30 to 10 o'clock to see if an application is complete because additional data has been put on. I would propose that we do a similar process that we did earlier, and that is to maybe on the same day take a moment to walk around, though many of us do that when we're purchasing things. Look at it from a standpoint of what is being proposed for the crushed parking area and where the building would be and that kind of thing. I would propose that we have a site walk on the same date, January 7th, after the Inn by the Sea, since it's almost within walking distance. That we defer the application completeness decision pending a review of the plans that were given to us this evening. We share the checklist with Leisure Architects and the applicant so that they have the same information that we do so that they can plug any holes that they see may be required.
Would you all agree that Saturday the 7th, would that be a time that you would be there? And could we come by, what would you think, about an hour at Inn by the Sea? So that 10 o'clock, would that be all right?
That's fine.
If we could come by and visit then. Appreciate it very much, and thank you for your submissions. And
Thank you very much for your time.
we will make note to you that December 30th is the time for the next submission date, so that any new material should be in.
Did the applicant get a copy of the checklist?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not even going to be here, so we can just do that.
Oh, he isn't here?
No,
Okay.
but we're going to do that anyway.
All right. The next item on our agenda is Woods Knoll, an extension of the letter of credit under Section 16-2-4, Paragraph 7. This is the second extension that we have considered for Mr. Barton's proposal, and you may recall we gave one about a year ago. Quite a bit of work has been done. If you reviewed the package of materials submitted on that, and I believe there is a motion. Mr. Barton is not here tonight. I believe there is a motion before you. The town has approved the letter of credit. So would someone like to make that motion?
I'll do it.
Oh, good.
Okay, be it ordered that the request of Robert Barton for an extension of the letter of credit for the approved Woods Knoll subdivision located off Old Ocean House Road be granted according to Section 16-2-A, C, Paragraph 7A, and the facts presented with the new expiration date being June 30th, 1989.
Second?
Has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And it is unanimous. And we are moving right along. It looks like we may even get through our agenda legally tonight. Our next item of business is Hidden Court, and that is a 4-lot subdivision review for pre-application conference under Section 16-2-2. And I must state that I have a conflict of interest due to the purchase of some land and also being in a butter, so I have asked Mr. Most to chair this portion of the meeting for me. And
Madam Chairman, in terms of being in a butter, I'm not sure that qualifies as a stepping aside, but certainly an interest in the land would, because we may face other issues where some of us are butters who will not be stepping aside.
As a matter of fact, I think there's some law in the state of Maine that specifically does not disqualify. I also, on reading the materials, noticed that I have a conflict since my law firm is involved in some of the documents. If the chairman doesn't mind, since it's the last item on the agenda and I have to go to Augusta early tomorrow morning, would it be
You are
arrogant
excused.
to ask to be excused?
You are excused.
Thank you.
Just for the record, with the two people abstaining, I don't think there's any vote required on this, but we do have 4 members of the board still present. Do I have to do that? Okay. Joel is appointed again as a voting member, even though I don't think there'd be any vote required. Could the applicant please come forward? Thank you. We are getting close to our ending period. If we could encourage you to move along promptly, it would be helpful.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Marshall from Terrence Dewan and Associates Landscape Architects. I'm representing Kimberly and Bob Davis in the third row there. They have become interested in this land and have been working out a contract with the Robinson family. And what you see tonight represents our efforts at planning. Also with us is Vaughn Pratt from Landvest and Lenore Hudson, a friend and realtor. You've probably had a chance to look at the plan, and I'll just go through it very briefly, what it consists of. The main house here was built in the 30s by Charles Henry Robinson. It's a stone house with a courtyard in the center. It has a spectacular view out to the ocean. The land was owned by C.H. Robinson and his brother Harry Robinson, and there's a complicated matter of ownership, but I have some material I'd like to add to your files regarding the ownership and the contracts that we're entering into at this point. The Robinson family, in selling this 60-odd acres to the Davises, are imposing deed restrictions on it. They are allowed to put on 2 houses of a minimum size onto very specific areas. There were building zones described by the Robinson family in their master plan for the property. One of the building zones was roughly in this area, and the other one is right here. The intent was to preserve the views, preserve the open space, while allowing for 2 more houses. We have taken those building zones and delineated 2 10-acre lots. We hope they're about exactly 10 acres. Each has frontage on the road, and each has a buildable envelope using the ordinance setbacks and so forth, as well as the building zones which are deed restricted. That's why there's this kind of funny looking line here instead of a normal setback off that property line. Those are in respect to the building zones, the deed restricted building zones. So we have the original house, a 10-acre lot here, which we call the field lot because it's mostly an open lot and it looks out over this field as a view. And then we have a garden lot here. From the stone courtyard house here, there still is a reflecting pool garden down to this point, and some formal Italian and Egyptian type gardens here, which are quite lovely. And this is called the garden house lot, and it has frontage on Ocean House Road here and its own existing driveway coming in there. There's an existing driveway coming in here, and we propose 1 new driveway for this lot here. All the others are already served by driveways. There's also a gatehouse which was built here and has its own driveway, and we're proposing that as an 80,000 square foot lot to make up the 4-lot subdivision. It's spectacularly beautiful, unique land, and we are committed to preserving the open space and and preserving the privacy and beauty of this land. Would like to make sure, above all else, that we have you all out for a site walk as soon as possible. The weather is coming, and I think once you've been there, you'll see why some of these decisions have been made.
Okay, very good. I think you've given us a very good overview. We have had a chance to at least see the package. I think we might have to do a little bit of suspension of our rules to have a site walk, but I think an early site walk might be helpful here, even before we have a completeness package, just to get us familiar with the site. I know I haven't seen it. I don't know if anybody else on the planning board has. There are a couple of issues here I think that we're going to be interested in. One is the ownership issue. I think
Excuse me?
The ownership issue.
Ownership.
I think will be right title and interest is a part of the program, and I think we're going to need to have information on that. The driveways that you are planning will front on our only real busy business zone, heavy traffic. I think site views, access to those driveways will be a factor, and we'll be looking for the right kind of information in terms of turning distances and site views on that. I don't know how this piece of property, from looking at it, could affect our green belt, if at all. I think that's something we should discuss. We are trying to develop an access from Fort Williams to Crescent Beach. I don't know whether this would be a factor in it or not. So we have a few items here that we can think about. I think this is a time to have these kinds of discussions, to get some things out on the table. And so you know what we're going to be looking for.
Definitely.
I don't want to monopolize this. Do any of the other board members have any thoughts on this application, which is a very interesting one? Joe?
Not a thought, but a question. What is the relationship between this piece and Lot 6, which is referred to as an addendum of the contract?
Lot 6 is this area right here, and it was not originally part of the land which the Davises agreed to buy, and then it was added on as an addendum, is that the proper word? So that it is part of the 60 acres. And the label Lot 6, is that a source of confusion?
No.
Okay. It is for someone, yes.
Will that land be subject to the same restrictions as the other?
Yes. Lot 6 is specifically deed restricted by the Robinsons. There can be no building of any sort. It must be preserved in its present character. Yeah. Yes. Well. Yes.
Excuse me. Where are the summer, winter roads that were referred to?
Okay.
Because it's very difficult to read this and see where the people are
Yeah.
going to have their access
Okay.
in and out of here. I'm concerned about any shared roads, because apparently that there is an association, but they will really only trim things.
Right.
I'm asking.
It's a
will there be
maintenance.
Any roads that will be shared by all?
We're proposing separate driveways.
All separate.
All separate driveways. The field lot would have a driveway coming in here, which is about opposite that little ERA Realty building across the street.
Yeah.
And then the big stone house has a driveway which is existing. It's got a wooden gate across it. And then this little gatehouse has its own driveway presently. And this driveway is also existing, and it has like a wrought iron gate.
Oh, yes, I've seen that.
Yeah.
That's right on the corner.
It's right on the corner. It's not an ideal place, and we maybe if we had it to locate today, we wouldn't choose that exact location, but it is existing, and it's...
But you have then 3 existing, and all of these are summer, winter road, and all of the roads that were referred to by Mr. Dewan?
Yes. The labels summer and winter come from the original Robinson house. They used this drive in the winter and this drive in the summer. I think it was kind of a romantic notion.
I got a little mixed up.
Yeah.
One more question. You refer to wells and the placement of septic tanks away from the wells. This would mean then if people did want to, at a later date, get to the water, and I'm sure there must be water, you know, along Route 77 there.
The water mains?
Yeah.
Yeah. There are
They
8-inch
could get-
water mains.
They could get to that water,
Mhm.
should they choose, without having to worry about access
Mhm.
over other people's land.
Right. That shouldn't be a problem. They each have their own frontage, and I spoke to Donald Wyman at the Portland Water District today, and he said that there was 8-inch water mains down both of these roads, and there was plenty of water for the additional lots.
That's good. I think that I would have that report, because the wells are acceptable,
Mhm.
but
Well, they-
at a later date, people might want to hook up.
Mhm.
And I was just concerned.
It's an option.
That there would be no place, no easements for them to work those water pipes.
Right. I think that while the access we propose is separate, if and when there are utilities brought into this lot,
Yes.
that perhaps they would be underground up to a point and then diverge to the two houses so that there would be a shared utility easement for underground. There are currently poles, utility poles coming into this house through the woods, and I think the Davises would at some point like to relocate their utilities into underground.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up, wells, which lots will be serviced by wells and which will be serviced by the Portland Water District?
Well, these two lots are the ones that, you know, are going to have houses built and will need wells or water lines coming in from the road. And we haven't established which option they will choose.
Okay.
If there is good water on the site, that will be their first choice.
That's
For
lot-
the expense of a long
Well, I guess we would need to
water supply
know
line.
roughly where some of those well locations would be, at least in turn, with respect to placement away from the leach field.
Sure,
That's lots 2 and 3 that you're talking about.
exactly.
Okay.
And the two existing buildings have wells?
I believe this house has a well, and this one is on the water line.
So if the one in the big stone house has a well,
Yes.
then in the building envelope, the
Of-
septic system on that next lot, the one your finger is
Mhm.
on, would have to be substantially far away from
Yeah.
that house.
Right. This house, I'm not sure where their well is. Do you know, Vaughn?
Yes, it's just move your finger up just a little bit, right up in there.
It's in the woods here?
And now back just a little bit. What I could say is that once you make the site walk, you will see that we're dealing with dramatic distances. We're dealing with 60 acres here, and the building envelopes were designed to retain the character and privacy of hidden court in perpetuity while maintaining the character and privacy for the type of house they would expect to be on the two building envelopes. And that was the intent of the family, to preserve the character of the land. So I think once you do that site walk, you will see that we're not dealing with the closeness of anything, but I'm very sensitive to what Stephen described as the leach field versus the well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The septic system for the existing stone house is in this field here, and there would, we will need to describe possibly easement for maintenance over a section of Lot 2. We have to, we know that the vent is right here, and it's a fairly new system, so we're hoping to recover plans describing exactly where it was built. Don't want to have to rip up the field. Questions?
Well, it looks good.
Mr. Chairman, a couple more issues that staff had. One is, as Ms. Marshall knows, is the whole question of lots and ownership, and it sounds like you have materials that may shed some light on that. It was confusing, and at first what looked like a 4-lot subdivision, depending upon how the ownership is laid out, could be more than that, it could be less. I think that it would be important for the board to look at those materials and actually see who owns what and what the subdivision is going to look like.
Could I elaborate on that a little? The Robinson family does plan to sell some bits of land around the edges of this estate to abutters. There's Shore Road up here, and those are the backs of their lots here. And this white strip here will be sliced like this, and small pieces of this strip have been offered to those Shore Road abutters, and most of them, in fact, I think all of them have accepted, because it will deepen their lots by approximately 140 feet and provide them that much buffer and additional depth, as well as those parcels, lands which are currently in trust or have been directly inherited by Robinson family members. Those could possibly be bought by, instead of being owned by a trust and kind of a consortium of Robinsons, individual Robinsons would like to buy pieces of land. So that may happen here, here, and here.
The one other issue regarding lots is with what's referred to in the documentation as Lot 6.
Yeah.
Is that part, although it has certain rights that other folks have, is Lot 6, in quotation, is that part of Lot 1? Or
Yes.
It is.
It is part of Lot 1, and in my letter, which I'm adding to your files, I am proposing that we rename that to the dedicated open space, and that we don't call it Lot 6 anymore. That's an old name. It comes from the Robinson Master Plan, and it was always meant to preserve and defend this land against any kind of construction. So it's the furthest thing possible from a building lot. So we'll call it open space from now on, instead of Lot 6.
And then final comment for tonight is that now dedicated open space area is actually part of the Greenbelt plan.
I've seen the Greenbelt plan, and what I saw was what you labeled alternative route, and it was sort of a textured.
That's the old plan.
That's the old plan, and it came down here.
Maybe
it came down Zeb's Cove Road.
The new plan should be made available to you, so that we are sure that we're talking about the right Greenbelt area. And also, I don't want to belabor this point, but it might be of interest. I don't want to add confusion, but if there is history in the way this land was constructed at one time that would be helpful to the planning board, only if it would be helpful, it might be something that we might want to have in our files. I only add that point because I know this parcel goes back a long time.
Yes, apparently it was a grant from the king.
Yeah. But if there is some history that would be helpful to us, I think
I'd be happy to provide that.
Otherwise, I mean, that's a judgment call.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Thank you. Since this is a pre-application conference this evening, and there are a couple of confusing pieces, nicely done plans and a wonderful idea, but a couple of confusing pieces for me. One is as we deal with the definition of what a subdivision is, do we really have the 4 lots? And I think that came up earlier. Or do we have more or potentially less lots than are shown by lot number? And I guess I would propose a very strict reading of the subdivision definition to determine whether there are only 3 or whether there are 10 or 15. And we dealt with a very similar issue when the Sprague Corporation divided its properties not for development but for family purposes a number of years ago, and we had to deal with that definitional issue of what a subdivision was and the purposes of a particular subdivision in that case. But I would think there are a lot of lines drawn here. There's a lot of language about what's proposed, but it almost appears as though there may be even fewer lots than 4 with a strict interpretation of the definition. So I would request that so that we can really see what we're dealing with for request for permission for subdivision approval process. The second issue is the road from the garden plot or the garden house lot.
Gatehouse or garden?
The garden house.
Garden house.
Which does come out right in the intersection, a very tough location for today's designed intersection as a principal access point for that lot. Be prepared on behalf of your applicant that the planning board may have some difficulty with that entrance to an intersection, and there may be restrictions on where that particular piece, if it's approved and approvable, can come out onto that road. Just because it's there doesn't necessarily mean that the planning board is going to approve a building lot that's serviced by a road that may be in the wrong location. So in terms of a pre-application, I guess that's some thoughts that I had. I would hope that we do a site walk, furtherance to your suggestion, Mr. Chairman, and that we schedule that soon.
Well, along those lines, this is a big parcel. My first thought was, let's try to do 3 on January 7th, but I don't know whether that's going to be logical with the size of this parcel, so we may have to pick another date. Is the applicant team open to us an early sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay. With the understanding that once we see your final submission, we still may have to have another one. Okay.
That would be wonderful.
I've got my calendar out. We've already got January 7th, the morning already booked up. I'm sorry.
Realizing that we do have a little parcel here, I will share with you that the site visitation will take no longer than an hour because of the ease of getting around the property. It is not a difficult property to understand, especially what you're looking at. So I
Yeah.
don't want to imply that this is difficult and will take a considerable amount of time.
Even if you go off the roads?
Oh, definitely. It's almost all open, and there are trails through the woods.
Tractor roads, even if we walk it, it cannot take longer than an hour to understand the property because you can virtually get to 3 points in the property and see everything that you want to see for planning purposes. And we'd love to have
He looks skeptical.
We'll also cross-country ski in January, I would expect.
Mr. Chairman, my
Yeah.
compliments. It's really refreshing
Yep.
to see something like this come by us.
Thank you.
Lots are large. I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
I have one further comment on that because of your sensitivity to the Greenbelt issue. And the Robinson family has always been very sensitive.
Madam, Mr. Chairman, could he use the microphone
Yeah,
so that
it
we
might
could
be helpful.
record for posterity these wonderful
All I
words?
want to do is reinforce something you're concerned about.
Could you give us your name, please, and identify yourself?
My name is Vaughn Pratt with Landvest Corporation, and we did the site plan review for the family over a 3-year period. And basically, it has always been their sensitivity that between the estate and the ocean, that no building ever take place. And the property has been deed restricted, much more so than this lot that we now call the Greenbelt lot, the Greenbelt, the open space, the dedicated open space. It is really much more than that, because the way these envelopes were designed is that there can be no building in front of the manor house. And we're dealing with 2,000 feet between the house and the edge of the beach. And that's very dramatic. And the family has always been sensitive that nothing happen in that area.
In the form of a building, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, that doesn't preclude a walkway or something like that.
Well, actually, another deed restriction placed by the Robinsons is that they will retain rights of travel by foot down to this beach, and that the owners of this house and these 2 proposed houses will also have those rights of travel by foot, but that no motor vehicles and that no other lot owners or public
Roads cannot be created.
roads cannot be created, and there can be no other users. This house will not have rights of use of the beach.
Is there a deed restriction prohibiting public access?
Well, it limits access to the Robinson heirs and the owners of these 3 houses.
Then I guess when we get into this process, we'll have to understand how the greenbelt can be impacted in this parcel. It sounds like we just excluded it, but maybe not. We're saying an hour to do the tour. Do we want to try to do it on the 7th?
Sure.
Okay, if we schedule it for 11 o'clock, we'll do 9, 10, 11. How's that for a busy morning?
Can we have lunch in the manor house?
Or tea or something.
Tea,
The
yes.
Jordan will take,
I'm not sure the Jordan sidewalk will take a full hour.
Well, we'll be ready at,
10:30?
Yeah, if we're early, we're early. If we're not, we'll be there at 11.
all right, that would be lovely.
Okay. Well, if there are no other questions.
Mr. Chairman, it is difficult, too, with 60 acres, not to be reviewing 30 or 40 house lots proposed.
And there's
it
no
is-
wetlands.
And no wetlands,
Yeah.
I'm sure. At least not that we'll see any in January, anyway, with
That's
snow on the
right.
ground.
Yeah.
But it is to second what Marion has indicated, that, and without being overly difficult, this is going to be a good opportunity to look at a very classy potential development.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have to, planning board members have to sign the plan?
We're not quite through yet. We do have a plan to sign, and just a little business, not much. I just would like to ask you if you'd be willing to move our workshop, which is normally scheduled for the first Tuesday in the month, to the 10th. Tuesday of the month to the 10th, which is the second Tuesday. And that would be to...
In the house, the 10th is full.
But they're thinking of other places.
What?
We might have to have, if we pick the 10th, there probably wouldn't be any room here unless something else was shifted. Then we have to see if we go to the library or some other spot. So space would be tight, but they were aware of it in town hall.
Okay, because zoning will try to get that.
Yeah.
Okay, it's all right with me.
Is the 10th all right with everyone else?
7 o'clock.
At 7 o'clock?
Yep.
And you will get a notice on that. Now, I guess we can sign the plan. Is there any other business to come before the board? I might just mention, as you're scheduling, that on Thursday, February 16th, we'd hope perhaps we could meet with the South Portland Planning Board, and that is a Thursday. Would that be possible?
Right now.
And
Is that vacation week? I'm just not sure where that falls. Or is it the following week? We may have to reschedule our regular planning board meeting. I think it's the next week, isn't it? The 20th. So let's discuss that at our workshop on the 10th and see what looks like a good date.
we perhaps go to schedule a dinner meeting so we can combine two things at once like we did last time we met with them. So.
If there's no further...
Are we hosting this time? We were in enemy territory last time, remember?
We were guests.
Well, I don't know, but hey, in by the
Well,
sea.
if we rush on this Inn by the Sea, maybe we can go there. Right. If there's no further business, let's sign the plan and then we can adjourn.